take us one trip.
In early 2023, the BBC put in a Freedom of Information request to DVLA. The outcome of that was published on the BBC News website at the time and showed that in 2022, just under 50,000 people had reported concerns about another person's driving. Now, many of these, of course, will be family members reporting concerns about older loved ones, but clearly this number will be just a tiny percentage of all those who have concerns about an older relative's driving. Now, if any driver is seen as being unsafe on the road, there's very little anyone can do, really, including the DVLA, unless that driver has a medical condition that may affect their driving safety. The only other way a license can be suspended or revoked is by a court of law, but this will normally come after a collision rather than prevent one. A list of notifiable medical conditions with guidance is issued on the DVLA website. Signs of cognitive decline due to the aging process alone can be seen in people's driving, even if there is no obvious medical condition. But this tends to be more noticeable in those over 85 or 90. It is a legal requirement to notify DVLA of any cognitive problems, as well, of course, as dementia. According to the Alzheimer's Society, there's also almost 1 million people living with dementia in the UK, but around about a third of these go undiagnosed. Most concerns from family members, in my experience, go hand in hand with a cognitive decline, which often shows up as forgetfulness or vagueness. So let's look at the process that family members are faced with if a driver becomes less safe than they used to be and also gets quite forgetful. The obvious first step would be to arrange for their loved one to see a doctor and maybe even take a memory test. But of course, this is easier said than done because the driver may just simply refuse to be seen by that doctor, saying there's nothing wrong with them. And even if a condition such as dementia is diagnosed eventually, this will often not mean that they have to stop driving, at least straight away, with many carrying on into the later stages of the condition when they actually have become unsafe. You just have to have a look at the guidance DVLA issues to medical professionals to see how complex this situation is for them. This is by no means an exact science. The family can also try conversations with the driver, which are aimed at discussing the most appropriate time to stop driving. But for many, this is has very little success and simply serves to put a strain on the family relationships. So in this situation, we have four different parties who all have a part to play. Firstly, we have the driver, who will not want to lose independence normally and hang up those car keys for good because it has a massive impact on their life and well-being. What makes matters worse is that if this is not dealt with in the early stages, in the latter stages of dementia, when the driver has potentially lost insight into road risk, they can become even more stubborn and about giving up driving. So, in any conversation you have about driving, they are likely to remember all the success they had when they were younger, but not the more recent problems they've been having. Secondly, we have family members who see the deterioration in driving skills often at a very early stage, but they either don't want to or can't stop their loved one from driving. They therefore seek help from doctors, DVLA, or another third party, such as a driving assessor, someone to take that responsibility of stopping their loved one from driving and being the bearer of bad news. Thirdly, there is the medical profession, and even specialists in older adult mental health issues find it very difficult to make a judgment on fitness to drive without any information about what the driver is actually like behind the wheel. And for GPs, for a number of reasons, this can be even more of a difficult judgment. And finally, there is the DVLA, who deal with many thousands of these type of inquiries each year through their panel of specialist medical advisors. But unless they get enough evidence, particularly from the driver's GP or consultant, they will not normally revoke a driving license under normal circumstances. So 2 things are apparent from this. Number 1, a large part of the procedure when deciding on fitness to drive is far from ideal by relying on the opinion of medical professionals who know nothing about how their patient actually drives in many cases. Number 2, family members are crying out for help, but there are extremely limited number of professional driving assessors in the UK available to sit with a driver who has dementia in his or her own vehicle and on the roads they normally restrict themselves to, particularly ones who have sufficient knowledge and understanding of the situation to be of any real help in relaying the information to medical professionals. Now, this is largely because they have been heavily discouraged by road safety organisations, meaning training schemes for this are almost non-existent, even though many driving instructors would be very happy to try and help with the proper training. I'm going to look at this more closely in part 3. Before we go on, I want to take a closer look at how difficult GPs and consultants find it to tell a patient to stop driving, even if they believe that's the right course of action. Having spoken to many of these medical professionals, the following video seems to sum the situation up perfectly.
Hi, my name's Joseph Ibrahim. In this presentation, I want to talk to you about one of the more complex situations a doctor has to face when they diagnose a patient with dementia. Let me put you in my shoes for a moment. Imagine that you're working in a memory clinic in regional Australia. You've just finished seeing your last patient of the day, Mr. Jones, an 80-year-old man with newly diagnosed Alzheimer's type dementia. He's already heading towards the door. So you go through your notes one last time, looking to make sure you've covered all of the clinical risks associated with dementia. So you've covered medication, finances, power of attorney. There's one last thing left to say. The one thing that's still missing. Just one last thing, Mr. Jones, you say. You'll have to stop driving. You continue packing your briefcase. Excuse me, doctor. Oh, yes, Mr. Jones. Did you say, now I'm not sure if I heard you correctly, did you happen to say, I'll have to stop driving? You explain how the tests you did with him in the clinic show he won't be able to react if some idiot pulls out in front of him on the road. Those tests, he says, I was just having a bad day. Those weird puzzles, they had nothing to do with driving. Besides, it's those young idiots on the road you've got to worry about, not me. He stamps his walking stick on the ground. You'll never stop me driving, never. It's only the following week that you think about Mr. Jones again. You see, Mr. Jones' son, Peter, who'd sat so quietly in the consultation, has come back to talk to you. He's a gentle soul who softly explains the impact of your consultation on his father's life. He tells you that not driving means that his father is now confined to his house. Stop and think for a moment. What would happen to you if you lost your licence? How would you get around? How would you see your friends? Now imagine, you're in your 80s, you live alone in your own house, you don't even own a computer. It could get pretty lonely, couldn't it? It's all well and good for a young city-trained doctor like you to say to Mr. Jones, find other means of transport, but the reality is very different. The nearest bus stop could be 2 kilometres away. Even if Mr. Jones managed with his arthritis and the walking stick, he would still have trouble getting up those steps into the bus. And what if he missed the bus? The half-price taxi vouchers, they seemed like a good idea, but the distances in the country means that it might cost $200 or more just to get to the clinic. Not exactly short change for someone on a pension. And not only have you restricted Mr. Jones's ability to leave the house, you've done it after diagnosing a new chronic medical condition for which he'll need multiple visits to the clinic. And what about the suggestion of his family driving him around? Seriously? The appointments are all in business hours. Can a working family manage to do that regularly? And it's not just Mr. Jones's mobility that's been affected. Not having your licence is a significant psychological change. Mr. Jones is very embarrassed explaining to his friends at the bowls club why he couldn't be there every week, and he is quite depressed by this. Peter explains to you that he'd been in the car with his father many times and never thought there was any danger. In fact, in his view, Peter said, slightly raising his voice now, Mr. Jones is more than just able to drive. He was in fact a damn good driver, and he was no risk to anyone. Peter was more concerned that his father's life had taken a dramatic turn for the worse, and it wasn't the dementia that had caused it, it was you.
So you can actually feel for GPs who are trying to do the right thing after being asked to make a decision on fitness to drive, particularly in the middle stages of dementia, when it's almost impossible to say one way or another without a road risk report from a suitably qualified assessor. The support they receive from DVLA is not particularly helpful with wording which leaves things a little unclear, to say the least. So words such as may be able to drive but must notify DVLA. It's difficult to assess driving ability in people with dementia. Considerations include poor short-term memory, disorientation, and lack of insight and judgment almost certainly mean no fitness to drive. Disorders of attention cause impairment. Another one is in early dementia, when sufficient skills are retained and progression is slow, a license may be issued subject to annual review. So as I say, not clear-cut at all. And yet these doctors are, in the majority of cases, the main cog in the decision-making process. So it's quite easy to see why we end up with a far from perfect system as far as casualty reduction is concerned. Now, the third and final video in this series will take a close look at how driving assessments can play a major role in the process, but how access to assessments, which are both fair and acceptable to drivers, has only really been tackled by one local authority area in the UK. So join me then to have a closer look at driving assessments, and particularly at a successful approach by Hampshire County Council.
All it takes is one trip